to an organization out of Pennsylvania. It's the Citizens Alliance of Pennsylvania, and they are doing a lot of work very similar to what we're trying to do here at Conduit News, and which is, spread the word, limited government, and hold our local government officials accountable. Here is Mr. Leo Knepper. He is the Chief Executive Officer for Citizens Alliance of Pennsylvania. Leo, welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Absolutely. So just kind of give us a rundown. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and tell us a little bit about the Citizens Alliance of Pennsylvania.
Well, I have been an activist, a member of the activist community in Pennsylvania, I guess going back to 2005. And the Citizens Alliance of Pennsylvania actually was started in 2009. To give you a little bit, I guess, in the way of background, Pennsylvania has a history of kind of bipartisan back-scratching and corruption. And what has been, kind of found over time was that without an organization providing resistance on the, the limited government side of the spectrum, Pennsylvania's Republican Party and Pennsylvania government has really trended towards getting bigger and more costly. We kind of have an odd, or at least it separates us from a lot of our other neighboring states, in that the Pennsylvania Republican Party actually gets a significant amount of money from labor unions and also from the trial lawyers. And part of that is the legacy of one of our most famous national senators, Harrell Specter, and part of it is just kind of a result of how Pennsylvania's population is distributed.
Wow.
So there's been a lot of bad policy on a bipartisan basis. We had in 2001 a Republican governor lobby for and sign an increase to the public sector pension package for teachers, state employees, lawmakers, and that was actually right before the dot-com bubble burst.
Wow.
And there has been really no effort to kind of rein in those expenses, and as a result, we find ourselves with roughly $100 billion in unfunded liabilities in just our pension system.
Wow.
So we have a lot of fiscal problems. We are consistently ranked one of the least friendly places to do business for a variety of reasons. For tax reasons, for labor regulations, and also because there are some unique things that Pennsylvania's environmental protection departments can do to stymie progress and kind of change their requirements, regulatory requirements midstream in projects.
Mm-hmm.
So that really it's hampered Pennsylvania's growth. So what our organization was founded to do was really, politicians are a lot like electricity. They'll follow that path of least resistance, and because there hasn't really been an organized effort to hem them in on the side of decreasing the size of government, the size of government hasn't decreased. So what our organization was founded to do was really to provide that resistance. And we do that in two ways. We do it through, we have a 501c4, so we do some direct lobbying. We do a lot of what I guess would be considered in Pennsylvania indirect lobbying, where we're educating the public about what their lawmakers are doing in the Capitol. And then we also have a state-registered political action committee, which allows us to participate in elections. And really, if you want to get politicians' attention, support a primary challenger against
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Now, let me ask you this. We're talking with Leo Knepper, the CEO for Citizens Alliance for Pennsylvania, and we're highlighting the reason we're
think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being with us today. The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We are building a liberty machine, and we want you to be a part of that program. One of the that process. One of the ways you can do it is to call or text 870-275-9799. Or you can sound off over at facebook.com/Conduit News, as always. And you can meet, really a growing listener base of people who want to watch the program as well as listen to it. All right. Where do we want to start today? Well, we got a great show for you. At the bottom of the next hour at 7:33, we'll be talking with Republican pioneer Mr. Gene McVeigh. He'll be with us. Excited about that. Then at the top of the next hour, we'll be talking about this new audit. There was a legislative audit that was conducted on the DHS program, just the entire department, I guess, the 7,000-plus employees. Think about that. 7,000-plus employees in the state of Arkansas work for the Department of Human Services. And they did an audit, and they found all kinds of things that are wrong. Mismanagement of funds. We have people intentionally submitting expenses that they know to be wrong, knowing that they'll just correct them at a later date. I mean, it's very, very, troubling stuff. The things that make, really the things that form a conservative worldview about the things the government can't do. We'll talk about that at 7 o'clock. The only thing that's missing from all of this is the assignment of blame. This is not DHS's fault. This is Governor Asa Hutchinson's fault. This is Asa Hutchinson's DHS. That's about the only thing that I think is missing from the report here. At some point the responsibility falls on him and his administration, not just within DHS. And that's what's so frustrating here. And I'm told that I'm told we don't know the worst of it. What's in this Gazette report from the other day? It's actually much worse than you guys even know yet. But I'm not going to cover that information until it comes out. Well, let me just say, I'm not going to cover it. I'll cover it at a later date. Let me just put it that way. All right, so what else do we have? So then I want to get to this Conduit for Action article here in just a minute. Governor Asa Hutchinson's forgotten promise. Back when he was running for governor in 2006, he said a little something about the grocery tax that I believe is applicable today. We'll talk about that. But let's get to our first story today, and it has to do with legislators on Facebook and what they say on Facebook. In particular, I want to focus on a senator from the Central Arkansas, Faulkner County area, Senator Jason Rapert, who, by the way, I ran into when I was down there for the pharmacy, the PBM thing. We had a good, a very friendly conversation. But there's a guy on Facebook by the name of Wade, and apparently this guy Wade is a pastor, and he posted this about Jan Morgan. He said, I would sincerely ask you to please consider voting for Jan Morgan for governor on May 22nd. I'm voting for her for the same reasons why Trump won the election in 2016. People are tired of out-and-out politicians. Jan is not a politician. Okay, seems simple enough. Let's read some of the comments. Terry writes, absolutely, I really hope we can do the convention of the states later, set term limits. Lillian writes, okay, will you vote for Judge Susan Weaver for judge? Then we have other, let's see here, other comments. I'm I'm sorry. Page just skipped down. My computer's kind of slow this morning. 1 second. Let's see. We have somebody named Melvin says, I already voted for her by absentee ballot. You see that one? And then we get to Senator Jason Rapert, who writes a very, very lengthy post. And this is what drew my attention because I just thought, well, okay, this is interesting. This is a state senator taking the time to, kind of formulate thoughts and write a very detailed message here on Facebook in response to this person, Wade, who also happens to be a pastor, saying, hey, I just want to encourage all my friends. This is who I'm voting for. I think this is who you should vote for. And this is what Senator Rapert says. My friend, I need to speak up and hope you will consider what I have to say. I want to be sure you have more information. I've had a front row seat in Arkansas government since getting disgusted enough to lay my own interests aside and run for office in 2010. I couldn't sit by and watch Democrats leading our country astray any longer. I also have a very good position in which to weigh the truth as it relates to Governor Asa Hutchinson. He is a good Christian man, Senator Rapert writes, and he leads with integrity. In some very intense moments, I have never seen the man lose his temper, use profanity, or personally attack others. He isn't arrogant and self-centered. The fact is, he is one of the most stable leaders I have ever worked with. He goes on. He and I haven't always agreed on certain points, but we are able to work together, and he welcomes input as we strive to make decisions. On the principles of conservative GOP ideals, he is solid, Senator Rapert writes. Now, I would certainly disagree on that last part. I've never met Asa behind closed doors. I don't know. I don't know if he's never used profanity or personal attacks or that sort of thing. I don't personally know one way or the other. I might have heard reports one way or the other, but here's one testimony here, Senator Rapert saying, hey, you know what, I've never heard him do that. But on the last part, though, this idea, I would verily disagree. On the principles of conservative GOP ideals, he is solid. No, he is not. But Senator Rapert goes on. Politically, he was a Republican before it was cool in Arkansas. Okay, let's stop right there. That doesn't mean anything. Senator John McCain has been a Republican for a very long time, and his policies are garbage when it comes to limited government and conservatism. And again, this idea that just because you've been a Republican for a long period of time somehow means that you're conservative is not a logical argument when we clearly see the objectively, there's a vast difference and divide in Republicans. Not just now, but historically, right? You could say the same thing about Ron Paul. Well, Ron Paul has been a Republican for a very, very long time. Well, in that case, look at Ron Paul's policy. You know, what did Ron Paul, the congressman from Texas, you remember him? What did he advocate for? Well, he advocated for ending the Federal Reserve. Okay, you know what I'm saying? There's a vast difference of views here. Okay, let's see. Let's keep going here. So politically, he was a Republican before it was cool in Arkansas. And by the way, just because you're a Republican before it was cool in Arkansas, that entitles you to what? That entitles you to the benefit of the doubt? No, not at all. As a matter of fact, if you look at Asa Hutchinson's record and how he learned to be a politician in the environment where he did come out of a very blue state, Arkansas, in the Clinton era, I think there's cause for concern here. What do you think? He goes on. He and I haven't always agreed on certain points, but we're able, let's say, politically, he was Republican before it was cool. He was appointed by President Ronald Reagan as U.S. Attorney, appointed by President George Bush to lead Homeland Security, and served in Congress as well. He was fighting for conservative policies in our state when many were not. Okay, again, that doesn't matter. What has he done as governor? That's what matters here, and that's why he has a primary opponent, just so you know. Nobody out there, Jan Morgan didn't primary Asa Hutchinson because of anything he did in Congress or anything he did when he was an attorney for, Ronald Reagan. That's not why he's got a primary opponent because of how he's governed the last 3.5 years versus what he said on the campaign trail versus what his actions are. That's why he has a primary opponent. He goes on. The truth is important. I have been present when Jan Morgan is tearing down Asa Hutchinson and the GOP legislators as well. She is telling lies, using misinformation and also manipulation. She sounds really good when there is no one there to counter what she says. I cannot support someone who will use the tactics she has been using. All right, let me stop there. This is very serious. Especially in the, this is very serious. We have Senator Jason Rapert here saying that Jan Morgan is, quote, telling lies. So I assume that the next paragraph is going to be a detailed breakdown specifically of what those lies are. Next paragraph. She refuses to be honest about the historic tax cuts we have passed. Okay. She refuses. So that's another accusation. She refuses to be honest about the historic tax cuts that we have passed. Now, I haven't heard her be dishonest about the historic tax cuts that they have passed. That's what they want to, $150 million. The issue here, $150 million in tax cuts, but you've increased spending by $610 million. Did government grow or did government shrink? You be the judge. That's the point that Jan Morgan has made. Now, is that being dishonest? Or is that asking a legitimate question? Is it pointing out that, hey, look, there's something not right here, folks. We're supposed to be fiscal conservatives. Not to mention, Jan Morgan has talked about the fact that you may have cut income taxes, but you have raised other taxes, and they have advocated for more taxes. That's not a lie. Again, specifically, what is the lie? What is the lie? It's a serious charge here. He goes on, it was well documented. We passed the largest state income tax in Arkansas history, over $100 million. We also passed the second largest income tax after that, approximately $50 million. He goes on, we have the lowest unemployment rate now in Arkansas recorded history. I mean, I've never even heard Jan talk about the unemployment number. We have seen over 60,000 new jobs created. We are now rated as the second most pro-life state in the country. We passed the Religious Freedom Restoration Act to protect... Oh, come on now. Yeah, you did that, but Asa Hutchinson caved on that. That's another reason he has a primary opponent. That's not a lie. Is it now a lie to say that Governor Asa Hutchinson got a phone call from Walmart and he caved on the Religious Freedom Restoration Act and you guys had to support a bill that Walmart approved of? After Asa Hutchinson was lobbying Democrats and successfully getting them to switch their vote in committee, and then a week later he sent it back to you guys and said, no, and then you guys hijacked Gary Stubblefield's bill? Yeah, see, I have a memory. I actually know what happened down there. This is what's so frustrating. This is the stuff that they I remember what happened. I think a lot of legislators remember what happened. And the real story here is how many of you Republican legislators folded. How many of you Republican legislators who claim that, these social issues are the number one issue, and I would agree with you on that. But when the governor, because he had an R next to his name, if he had a D next to his name, you'd have stood up, you'd have overridden his veto, and you'd have passed it anyway. And you would have. But because it was a Republican, you said, got to have respect for the office. When in reality, you are endowed with constitutional authority. And this party loyalty stuff, when people actually go against what they told the people they stood for, that to me is wrong, because that is the deception. And we are being robbed of the government that we're supposed to have, or we were told we were going to get. I'm sick of people who are more worried about offending Governor Asa Hutchinson than they are offending the people that voted for them and sent them to office. That's what I'm sick of. And I see it everywhere, not just with the religious freedom situation. Okay. So this is what else Senator Jason Rapert said about Jan Morgan. Jan Morgan has never been a part of the legislative victories I just mentioned. Her only contribution has been tearing down a good man and trashing the hard work I have helped accomplish in our state. Morgan likes to claim Asa has increased spending, pointing to revenue growth in our state. It's not revenue growth, it's spending growth. Surely he knows the difference between a revenue report. Like, surely he knows the difference between revenue and expenditures, right? Wouldn't you think? Specifically, what I'm saying is, or maybe not. Maybe he doesn't understand the difference between a revenue report and an expenditure report. But I gotta know he does. I gotta think that he does. He goes on. He says our state is growing. Now hang on a second. Now come on, that is skirting the issue. Morgan likes to claim Asa has increased spending, pointing to revenue growth in our state. No, she's pointing to spending growth, not revenue growth. Fact. First year in office, he increased spending $133 million. Second, 140. Third, 160. Now 174. I'm sorry, 172. 172 million. Ladies and gentlemen, they want to brag about a $100 million tax cut when they've increased spending $600 million. That is the point. And see, when you realize that, you're like, hang on, wait a second. Are you guys trying to deceive the people? Are you guys trying to grow government and then tell us that you're shrinking it? Is the government getting, now we could talk about revenue, is the government getting more money from the people right now or less? That's an issue. And you know what the campaign is now saying about this increased spending? They're saying, well, Texas has, is Greg Abbott a big spender? Because they're looking at Texas and their increased spending. But here's the thing. It's all about a percentage. It's all about the percentage of your spending increase versus your increase in GDP, right? And if you look at Texas, they essentially have, if you look at it in that context, Texas actually is not increasing spending, right? Because their economy grows and their government is actually the same size in relation to their economy. Arkansas is not doing that. That's not what we're doing at all, okay? And people know it. Goes on. Let's see. Well, wake up, he says. Our state is growing. It is expected that when you cut taxes and expand the base, people will pay less taxes overall and spur growth. We are confusing the issues here, aren't we? This results in the same revenue being collected even though the rate of taxation is lower. More economic growth will lead to more revenue even on the... Again, we're not talking about revenue. We're talking about spending. There's a big difference there. Now, I'm sure many of you are wondering, why did Senator Rapert feel the need to write a very detailed Facebook post in response to just somebody, and I guess it's somebody in his district who's a pastor saying, hey, I'm voting for Jan Morgan because I'm tired of politicians. Asa Hutchinson is a politician, and I want somebody who's not. I don't know. I mean, I guess the response is, hey, look, we just want you to know all the facts, and or an attempt to try to convert somebody. But there's some people that didn't take too kindly to this. I know we have to go to break here. I'll read you the responses to Senator Jason Rapert's Facebook post here in just a second, but we have to go to break, I'm told. Back in just a moment.
Welcome to the Arkansas Obamacare Hotline. We would be more than happy to help you enroll in Arkansas Obamacare today. We just need a little information about you. Let's get started. If you're disabled, pregnant, or looking for medical care for your child, the program is currently full, and there's no doctors to see you. Please hang up now. If you're an able-bodied adult, please press 1. If you're currently employed, we're sorry, but you most likely do not qualify for the program. Please quit your job and call back later. If you don't work and instead play video games all day with your cats in your grandmother's basement, please press 1. If you've never lived in Arkansas, press 1. If you currently live in another state, press 1. If you recently purchased a home in New Jersey for $750,000, please press 1. If your current identity has previously been used by another person, was created before your actual date of birth, or doesn't really exist, please press 1. Congratulations! It sounds like you're the perfect candidate to receive Arkansas Obamacare. Please stay on the line, and a hardworking DHS employee will be with you as soon as possible. While you're waiting, feel free to relax as your ambitions to gainful employment fade away. PHP Parody.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So Senator Jason Rapert is trying to convince some people on Facebook to not vote for Jan Morgan. He's defending Governor Asa Hutchinson, saying that he's a Christian man who does not cuss when he's in behind closed-door meetings, and that sort of thing. You know, what's interesting is, you know, I'm a Christian as well, and I have a different assessment of the situation. Now, I don't start the sentence by saying, "Hey, I'm a Christian," you know, and hey, just so you know, you know what I mean? Hey, I just so you know, what I'm about to say is I'm a Christian first. Just know that. That's not how I start, you know, my sentences and everything. Some people do, and that's fine. I would just say, but as a Christian myself, like, what do we do when we're at an impasse if we both are claiming to be Christians? And I believe that Asa Hutchinson is actively trying to deceive the people of Arkansas. Like, I believe that, and I can back that up with statements that he's made versus what he's actually done, or what he's actually done versus how he's describing what he's done. Okay, and that's my assessment. You know what I'm saying? And yet yours is, well, but you know, I think he's and listen to some of these comments here. Listen to some of these comments. Let's just get to that. Forget what I have to say. It doesn't matter. We have a guy named Harrell responding to what Senator Rapert said about the reason you need to vote for Asa instead of Jan. And he says, basically, there are many kind, polite Christian Democrats as well, but that don't make them small government conservatives who are sick of career politicians. Asa has let a few good pieces of legislation go unsigned, but he says expanded Medicaid and increased regulations. I can list examples if needed, but you are in the Senate and already know this. It goes on. There's a few more. Jason says, you support who you choose, sir. Let me see here. We have the guy who originally posted this, Wade, saying, Jason, you and I are going to be on two different sides of the fence of this issue. Honestly, when he promised to sign the Religious Freedom Bill but changed his mind because it didn't mirror the federal bill, I knew then who he was, a career politician. I also know too much about how he tried to remove Josh Miller out of office because Josh didn't bow down to him. We need new blood that is not tied to lobbyists but tied to tax-paying citizens of Arkansas. And that's all you got to know. That's not Asa Hutchinson. And that's why Jan Morgan is even in the race and is getting the support she's getting, is because people are sick of this and people are recognizing this. I find it interesting, though, that we do have some Republicans trying to circle the wagons here to protect Asa. Back in a moment. Doing this, folks, is we're highlighting, you know, what we're going through down here in Arkansas. There are other states going through similar things. There are organizations trying to fight that. Now, I'm interested, Leo, do you guys ever get any pushback for being involved in the political process the way you are? Because you just said you've got a 501c3, you've got a 501c4, you've got a way to participate in elections. So does that make anybody in Pennsylvania angry because your goal is to limit government, and the fact that you're legally using the correct entities to try to affect the most change? Do you guys get a lot of criticism for that?
Well, just a slight correction. We don't have a 501c3. We just operate a C4 and a political action committee.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, to your question, we get a lot of pushback. So we do a lot of things very differently. For example, Pennsylvania collects union dues and union political money from state employees via the payroll system and taxpayer resources. We had a bunch of Republicans kind of vote against ending that practice last year, and what we did was we actually put together a least wanted poster and mailed it out to basically every Republican donor in the state to let them know how their money was being spent in supporting these kind of people. And so, yeah, we definitely get pushback. It's kind of funny because I don't actually get phone calls from Republican establishment type people in Pennsylvania with them being angry at me. What ends up happening is they'll actually call up our donors and complain to our donors to try and get, to put pressure on them. What's interesting is that a lot of our donors used to be donors to the Republican Party and, its various tendrils. But after they've kind of learned how ineffective and counterproductive that was, they've actually switched over to donating to us. So, they will try to put pressure on our donors. We've never actually, knock on wood, run into any issues where we've had kind of abusive authority directed towards us. I actually, at one point, we were supporting a primary challenger against our Speaker of the House, a Republican, and he sent a handwritten 3-page letter over to our office telling me what a jerk I was and how much I didn't understand Pennsylvania's politics. Shortly thereafter, he retired because he...
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, the last thing I'll say about this post that we've been going over, and I find it interesting because, Senator Jason Rapert, has been in office, I guess, since 2010, and he's, again, trying to urge people to not vote for Jan Morgan, and instead he's defending Asa Hutchinson. And so you have a guy named Harrell on Facebook who writes, who actually posts several articles in this thread about Asa Hutchinson. And matter of fact, one of them is a Politico story, and the other is Washington Times story. Is that another one? Okay, yeah. So these two stories here, you don't have these, Joe. It's okay. But this one Arkansas Times story headline, Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson bathroom bill unnecessary, where he's talking about the bathroom bill. Now, see, this is a huge problem. We talked about this last week. But if you've got Asa Hutchinson, who didn't even want to debate a bathroom bill the last session, but he's now actually claiming that he is, pushing back or pushed back against this whole concept that a man can decide whatever bathroom he wants to go into or whatever. That is an act of deception. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, I wonder if Senator Rapert would agree with me on that. Would he agree that the governor had an allergy, and that's being nice, but let's be nice. He had an allergy to even allowing legislators to debate the bill. He used one of his nephews to make sure that it wasn't going to even get heard in judiciary because they just refused to even have meetings. And now he has tweets and paid ads to get reelected where he claims that he's pushing back against Obama's guidance for our schools concerning bathrooms. Now, that is advancing a perception that was very different from the reality last year of Governor Asa Hutchinson's thoughts and opinions on the subject. I believe that's an act of deception. I believe you're trying to put a cloak of conservatism over what is a very, at best, moderate position. And when I say at best, that's for his sake. I think it's... And then there's this other article that was posted on Facebook in response to this post by Senator Jason Rapert. Headline, Arkansas governor bashes Clinton on health care, yet backs key Obamacare provision. Wow, a Politico story seeing the hypocrisy here, that the Arkansas governor bashed Clinton on health care, yet backs Obamacare's Medicaid expansion. See, these things make conservatives in Arkansas angry, because we think that you guys get elected by campaigning on popular Republican ideas in the Republican platform, and then you guys do the opposite. Why is it that Republicans in leadership are bending over backwards to save a socialist health care program from a socialist president? Or I'll give it to you another way. Why are you bending over backwards to save a program that operates under a socialist health care system from a socialist president? And this is why people are very upset. So, anyway, I find it interesting. Again, in his original post, Senator Rapert did say that, Jan Morgan tells lies about Asa. I have never heard her tell a lie about Asa Hutchinson. I have heard her talk about how Asa supported a brand new tire tax that is now law. I've heard her talk about how he increased the current tire tax. I've heard about how we increased taxes on digital downloads. I've heard about that. I've also heard the fact that he's increased spending. I've heard her talk about that. Now, those are not lies. You may not like that they're being brought up to the people and the Republican majority is being exposed as having followed somebody who is actually not implementing the conservative policy. And I'll give you one more example of that. Do you know why you establishment Republicans were not only just mad at Conduit for Commerce's scorecard? You notice you were mad at all of them, right? Most of them. Now, why is that? Why were you upset at the American Conservative Union, Americans for Prosperity, Conduit for Commerce? What were some of the other ones? Family Council. Why were you guys upset at all of those people or all those organizations that were scoring you negatively? Because it wasn't about personality. It was about you, how you voted. And it was about the bills, that their priorities, these private groups' priorities, and how you voted concerning them. That's all it was. It's just a snapshot, a metric of how you voted. And you guys were so upset and you were so outraged. You tried to make it personal, but here's the thing. You're projecting. Because the bottom line is, you need to think about the personalities that you're following. You need to think about who it is that you're following. And the reason you guys got bad scorecards, not just from Conduit for Commerce, but from other people as well, other groups as well, is because the people you're following are not pursuing a limited government conservative agenda that can be found in the platform of the Republican Party. That is why you got bad scores. The version of republicanism that you are pursuing and you are listening to will not fly in Tennessee, would not fly in Texas, would not fly in other red states. But somehow you think it's going to fly here. Somehow Arkansas is a brand new Republican state, relatively speaking, and yet you guys have ideas that aren't even on the platform that you think are conservative or you're trying to sell as conservative. By the way, that's not just me that said that. That's actually State Representative Charlie Collins, who said it in a tweet when he was questioned about a millionaire's yacht tax. And somebody said that's not in the Republican Party platform. And Charlie Collins said, I got a lot of good ideas that aren't in there yet. So this guy, Harrell, on Facebook says, as he posts these links to Asa Hutchinson, national sites basically exposing Asa as being a progressive Republican. Harrell writes, those are liberal sources that I provided, and I could go on. He writes, as a Baptist pastor, I don't need lectures from a state politician on the merits of Christianity. I'm well qualified to discern those. Being a Christian does not qualify someone as a governor. They're more to the office than being a nice guy. Facts are facts. As a Christian in government, Asa should have had no problem supporting the Religious Freedom Bill, yet he did not. Need I go on? Senator Rayburn. And it goes on. I mean, it's a pretty long post. It goes back and forth. Oh, I see Gene McVeigh posted in this thread. Gene's actually going to be on the program at 7:30 here in a little bit. Now, I have spent enough time on this particular story, but I'm going to move on now. But I just wanted to tell you, it is interesting how we do have it's not just Senator Raper, but it's other people who are trying to push back and combat on social media the I don't know, I would say like the excitement for Jan Morgan and her primary challenge. Again, the fact that Asa Hutchinson has a primary opponent is a win for grassroots conservatives. The fact that Asa now has to moderate his progressive agenda and actually try to convince us he is a conservative again is at least refreshing to me, because he's at least acknowledging that the base of this party is a limited government one. So that's why he has to announce more tax cuts. If we'll just reelect him, he'll take it from 6.9 down to 6. If we'll just reelect him, he'll decrease government by 50%. But we know that was carefully crafted language, because you can decrease state agencies and not affect spending at all. And he's doing all these things. Now he's against the transgenders. That's what he wants you to think now. He's paying for ads. And oh, by the way, he's now got an ad. He's got to go back 20 years. He's got to go back decades to get that video of him shaking hands with Ronald Reagan, because Ronald Reagan appointed him as U.S. attorney. He's got to do that in order to win a race in 2018. Just so you know that he's conservative. Yeah, again, it's a victory in and of itself. I'm telling you, it really, really, truly is. Primaries are such a good thing. They're so healthy. They really are. They're so healthy for people who are claiming to be under this one banner, whether it's any party, Libertarian, Republican, Democrat. Primaries are such a healthy thing, such a healthy exercise, because, and this is why we should have closed primaries, by the way. It makes no sense you would let somebody who's not affiliated. And I'm not a registered Republican, but if they had closed primaries, I would be in a heartbeat, because I'd want to have a say in what the party actually, who's going to represent the party. You know what I'm saying? All right. Next we have, let's go over to, while we're on the subject of Asa, let's just talk about some of Asa's forgotten promises, shall we? This is a great piece. Conduit for Action, Asa's Forgotten Promise, eliminate all the grocery tax. Do you remember when Asa Hutchinson made a campaign promise to eliminate the grocery tax? He doesn't want you to remember that. During the 2006 election for governor, Asa Hutchinson proposed eliminating the grocery tax immediately. You see, at the time, his opponent, Governor Mike Beebe, proposed only a gradual reduction in the grocery tax. So Hutchinson was like doubling down, saying, no, I'm going to eliminate it all if you elect me. Now, Governor Asa Hutchinson lost to Mike Beebe back in 2006, and Governor Beebe kept his promise, and he cut out most, but not all, of the tax on groceries. Now, despite Asa having made the elimination of the grocery tax a plank in his unsuccessful bid for governor back in 2006, as governor, Hutchinson has done nothing to eliminate the rest of the grocery tax. And so he was on KRK Channel 4 News back in 2006 where he said this. Go ahead and click on that, Joe, and see if we can't get that over our speakers. whenever you're ready.
And I have a record of leadership. I think through technology, in tax reform and tax relief, I can provide clear and direct leadership to accomplish that. One of the problems is the fact that we have high tax rates in Arkansas. I want to eliminate the sales tax on groceries. Next year, we can do it with a $700 million surplus, but we do need to invest $50 million of general improvement funds in higher education. I think that's a positive step forward, training the workforce, working as governor in leadership and recruiting industry, helping our small businesses that are here as well.
Yeah, as well. That's it. The small businesses, trust me, are the afterthought. But so you hear her say, I want to eliminate the grocery tax. By the way, did you hear how much surplus we had? Back in 2006, we can do that with a $700 million surplus. It's almost $1 billion. When Huckabee left, it was even higher. I believe, well, yeah. Or it was maybe $700 million. Forgive me if I don't have that exactly right, but he said $700 million. But can you know what our surplus was last year? It was like $15 million. What is going on? What's the key driver of our spending? ASA, yeah, but it's also Medicaid expansion and ASA by default. Now, why is this relevant, that ASA promised to eliminate the grocery tax back in 2006? Well, the reason this is relevant is because now we have the Tax Reform and Relief Task Force, and they're looking at ways to eliminate exemptions. One of those on the list is the grocery tax, meaning restoring the grocery tax back up to the 6.5% state sales tax rate. Which would be odd, considering he said he wanted to eliminate it entirely back in 2006. Conduit for Action writes, in addition to ignoring his earlier campaign promise, the tax task force he proposed and that is operating under the guidelines he set is now considering the option of raising the grocery tax back to the full sales tax rate. You know what ASA said the other day in an Americans for Prosperity event? He said that eliminating exemptions are not tax increases. Again, I'm telling you, the biggest problem with the divide in the Republican Party is we can't agree on the definition of words and phrases. If you eliminate a tax exemption, you are raising that tax. Now, it may be that on the other side, you lower a tax somewhere else to where it is a wash. That's a possibility. But if you eliminate a tax exemption, you are increasing a tax. That is now more money from the people to the government. That is the definition of a tax increase. They're not paying it now, and they will after your legislation passes. You are taxing the people more. I mean, goodness sakes. What did we fight the Revolutionary War for? Over tax increases. You know what I'm saying? I think we know when more money's going for the people, from the people. Unbelievable that he tries to say that an exemption is not a tax increase. Or ending an exemption. And likewise, the opposite. An exemption would be a tax cut. There's less money going to the government. More money going to the government, tax increase. Less money going to the government, tax decrease. Those are the definitions. And so in whatever, quote, reform package they come up with, if they end exemptions here and cut taxes over here, the definition, the analysis, the words that we will use to analyze whether it's been a tax increase, a tax decrease, or stays the same will be this. More money going to the government? At the end, when it's all said and done, well, that's a tax increase on the people. Less money going to the government, that's a tax cut because the burden of taxes is now lower on the people. Same amount of money going to the government, you've just shifted taxes and you have made the process revenue neutral, so it's neither a tax increase nor a tax cut. Even though you want to put it on your mailers, I know you guys want to put a tax cut on your mailers. I know you do. If you want to put a tax cut on your mailers, then decrease the amount of money going to the state of Arkansas. And then you can do it. And be an honest person when you do it. Keep going. Hang on. Campaign promises are unfortunately too often forgotten by the candidate making them. Remind the candidates of their promises before and after you go to the polls on May 22nd. Let's hear it for Governor Asa Hutchinson one more time. Back in 2006, he was on KRK Channel 4, and he said this about the grocery tax, which is now they're considering raising the grocery tax. Take a listen.
And I have a record of leadership. I think through technology, in tax reform and tax relief, I can provide clear and direct leadership to accomplish that. One of the problems is the fact that we have high tax rates in Arkansas. I want to eliminate the sales tax on groceries. Next year, we can do it with a $700 million surplus, but we do need to invest $50 million of general improvement funds in higher education.
We've got to go to break, ladies and gentlemen.
I think that's a positive step forward.
That's Governor Asa Hutchinson again, 2006. This is Conduit News Radio. Back in just a moment.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
In Arkansas, every single hour there is a politician not getting what they want. For some, it's an absolute nightmare. The sleepless nights wondering if progress will ever come. Lying awake pondering how to grow government in this political climate. Asking questions like, why don't my constituents want to pay a few cents more in taxes? Everyday politicians feel abused and neglected. These politicians are starving for power. They're hungry, confused, and they don't understand why no one seems to care. Will you be a patriot and commit today to help these poor, starved for power public officials? It's simple. All you have to do is commit to stay silent and never dissent or stand in the way of your politicians' rise to power. Never speak up or get engaged to stop the growth of government. By committing to these simple steps, you will ensure the life of your politician will be filled with contentment and the respect they are desperately seeking, as well as campaign contributions from lobbyists.
This message brought to you by Aristocrats Serving Arkansas.
PHP Parody.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, good morning. Hope everybody's waking up okay. Janet on Facebook writes about this situation. Apparently, so Jan Morgan the other day was actually at the Faulkner County. Is it the Faulkner County? Was it the Tea? Is it the Tea Party there? And she spoke, and I think this is what I think Senator Rapert was there, and this is what this is what led him to post what he posted. But Janet on Facebook, Janet Crow, she's a good friend, says that I guess he forgot that I was in the room at lunch when Jan was there, meaning if the accusation was that she's telling lies. And it's like, well, and most of the time, by the way, Jan Morgan actually just tells of her own experience with Asa in the meeting that she had with him, by the way, over the Second Amendment. And, of course, we know that the enhanced carry bill was actually a political bill. It had nothing to do with what was a good, effective policy. It was Asa's misguided philosophy that he only trusts you with your Second Amendment right if you check in with him first, so that he knows that you're qualified to use it. Janet writes, copied from Facebook, I guess everyone has forgotten that our governor constructed an unconstitutional maneuver to pass his version of Medicaid expansion when he couldn't get the necessary votes. Yeah, that's true. That actually happened. So let's talk about dishonesty. Let's talk about what is a deception, what is a lie. That was, in my opinion, it was unconstitutional. You know how I know that they thought it was unconstitutional? Because as soon as they came back in, they ran a little bill where they didn't need the 75% threshold to make sure that if somebody had created a legal challenge to what the governor had done with his line item veto, his unconstitutional line item veto, that a judge couldn't rule and then just end the program. Yeah, I know. Yeah, they knew it was unconstitutional, too. That's why they came back and fixed what they had done. But they got out of the fiscal session, didn't they? They got out of the constitutional requirements. Unbelievable. You want to know how ridiculous? Asa is asking you to believe he's a conservative, but he got the Democrats to believe he was a liberal because he is. He got the Democrats to vote for a bill that said Obamacare in Arkansas was going away. And it got him to do it so that it would pass and go to the governor's desk. And then the governor just took a pen and marked out the part where it said Obamacare was going away. Now, hang on a second. You got the 75% that you're required to get to spend money, but then and the Democrats voted for it, trusting in the governor to line item veto it. Now, that is some trust right there. I mean, that is, you talk about bipartisanship. I mean, Asa Hutchinson basically rewrote the book on what bipartisanship is. Hey, join me in this scheme so that we can get around the conservatives who are not voting for the budget because their constituents don't want them to. So I need you. We're going to make a bill that gives the conservatives exactly what they want. And we're going to get two of them to vote for it, which they did. That's going to get it to my desk, but then I'll line item veto the thing that got their vote. I'll line item veto the thing that secured their vote. And the Democrats said, okay, we'll vote for the thing that is going to... Folks, and he wants you to believe he's a conservative now? He wants you to believe, I was appointed by Ronald Reagan. I've been a Republican for before it was cool to be a Republican. It has nothing to do with how you got here, Asa. It has everything to do with what you've done, sir, and how you've governed. And you are a status quo, big government Republican. You are not conservative at all. I mean, I'll give you credit on the pro-life stance. So I'll give you credit on that. Defunding Planned Parenthood to the heartland. But you show me the politician in Arkansas that's going to win by not being pro-life. Everybody's pro-life now, and it's a good thing, but it's low-hanging fruit. It's low-hanging fruit. What's your tax policy, though? How much have you increased spending, sir?
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk, 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
Didn't actually want to have to work to win a race.
Exactly. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's how you know you're being effective. So, Leo, tell us about the Iron Triangle. What is that?
So the Iron Triangle is a helpful illustration for us to try and educate voters. It's, you know, big government special interests, lobbyists, and career politicians. And those are really the three forces that work together to stymie not only government reform, but also to try and prevent reforms that are favorable to taxpayers. And those are they all kind of work in concert. So you have your big government special interests, and that's everything from organized labor to big business who benefits from increasing the cost of their competitors entering the market through increased regulation. Big business, one of the dirty secrets is that larger companies actually like regulation because it prevents entry into market.
Yes.
It raises competition costs, so it keeps new people from opening up businesses and becoming competitors. So big business doesn't dislike regulation. It actually creates kind of a corporatist climate.
Yeah, they want to use the government to, well, what I say is, Johnny, sweep the legs out from under the competition. You know, they want to take a cheap shot at the little guy that's not using the government to, you know, guarantee, and in some cases in Arkansas, guarantee a taxpayer flow of money to their business.
Oh, absolutely, and we have that in Pennsylvania as well. Through various taxpayer subsidies, they're actually forcing, you're forcing one competitor to subsidize another just because they have more access to the levers of power, and the people who are writing the budgets. So we've found ourselves kind of on the opposite side of the table. I guess in 2013, our Republican governor was advocating heavily to increase Pennsylvania's tax per gallon on gasoline.
Huh. We have that down here, too, with our Republican governor. What a coincidence.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, to fund, roads and bridges. And we actually are, at this point, either the highest or the second highest tax per gallon on gasoline as a result of that. But anyway, we were one of the only organizations who were out there, and really the only organization who was out there really kind of banging the drum about how bad this policy was. And so we found ourselves, we had the Chamber of Commerce and various manufacturing associations actually advocating for this higher tax. So we found ourselves numerous times on the opposite side of the table from various, what generally the public would think of as, organizations who would support conservative policy. They support lower taxes. They don't, for themselves, they don't necessarily support lower taxes for other people.
Yeah, for everybody. Yeah.
Right, for everybody. So, and then we also have a very strong public sector, government employee unions in Pennsylvania. The largest single contributor to political campaigns in Pennsylvania is the teachers union, followed by AFSCME, the government employees union. So we have a lot of money flowing from the government sector to politicians in order to basically have a seat on both sides of the negotiating table when it comes to taxes and increasing pay and things like that. And against actually decreasing the number of employees the government needs, quote unquote needs.
Yeah.
And then we have our kind of long-term lobbyists. We had an interesting thing happen a couple of years ago where one of the more famous or infamous lobbyists in the Capitol's son was actually running for a House seat. And we had the temerity to expose kind of the nonsense that he had. In fact, the son.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
So there is a culture of corruption in Arkansas politics. We're going to be covering that, I'm sure, a bunch this hour. Welcome to the program, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. I'm Paul Harrell. This is Conduit News. And you can send me a text or a phone call. The number 870-275-9799. A couple of days ago, over at conduit4action.org, there was a piece written about State Representative James Sturch. Now, this piece detailed essentially a loophole in the process that is actually kind of aiding a potential corruption, to say the least. The concept is, here in Arkansas, you cannot work as a legislator and also be a lobbyist. That is illegal. You can't do that. But there's a loophole where you can be a legislator and work for a lobbyist, and that's what's going on here. Where it was reported that State Representative James Sturch worked for essentially Legacy Property and Holdings, but Legacy Property and Holdings is owned by Chad Gallagher. Chad Gallagher, all the way from DeQueen, where James Sturch lives in Independence County. It's a very large distance away. But then there's Legacy Consulting. So you've got Legacy and Legacy here. Legacy Consulting is the lobbying arm, okay? And you look at, essentially you look at who is a registered lobbyist, and you figure it out. Okay, yeah, you're being employed by a lobbyist, and it must be nice. Must be nice to get the legislative salary, and then you get a little something on the side. And so that's what's being reported. And the reason it's being reported is because this is the type of behavior that leads to corruption, and taking advantage of these loopholes are things that the people have a problem with. And if you look at everything that's happening with the court case with John Woods and Jake Files and the culture that's down there at the Marble Palace, it makes you wonder. If you couple that with the fact that Governor Asa Hutchinson and James Sturch, are cut from the same cloth in terms of James Sturch will be controlled and will do whatever the governor wants him to do. That's why he is now primarying Senator Linda Collins Smith, okay, who has a fantastic voting record, who is extremely conservative, and her conservatism actually exposes other Republicans in the bigger government as not being conservative, right? So this is a big deal. Now, the reason I'm bringing this back up is because during the break I noticed that State Representative James Sturch has actually posted on Facebook where he wrote, "Looks like this campaign will be typical of past experience. My opponent and her conduit of friends have never ran a clean race. So it should come as no surprise that within weeks of the election, they have started to throw mud and half-truths questioning my integrity and character." No one is questioning your integrity and character, James. If you took it that way, well, maybe you should ask yourself why you took it that way. We're essentially saying that there's a loophole here, and that it's not this is not a good thing to do, and it's not a good. I mean, it's I mean, look, there's a reason people don't trust politicians. I think that sometimes if you just report the truth, people's character and integrity are called into question. You know what I'm saying? So the goal is not to question your integrity or character. The goal is to report the truth of a situation And if that makes people question if that makes yourself question your integrity and character, well, sometimes the truth will do that to people. Interestingly enough, he says that within weeks of election, actually Conduit News reported on this before Conduit for Action did, or maybe there was but it was a long time ago. It was actually, I'm pretty sure we ran this story back in, before Christmas, I think. And I don't even know if James Sturch had filed yet to run for office. And so the idea that this is a last-minute thing, because remember, we actually had the map up, and we were like, the Queen, Arkansas is here, and Independence County's here. Why is he working for this company? Anyway, I'm positive we did that late last year. So this isn't some last-minute attack. It's not that at all. And it goes on, texting to Colin Smith. But here's what's interesting is that, and I haven't mentioned his name in a long time, but former state representative Nate Bell asks James Sturch, and Nate Bell is not a fan of this program. Nate Bell writes, James, both of you are people I respect, meaning Senator Linda Collins Smith and James Sturch. And I don't have a dog in the hunt. I also despise the Conduit cabal. I wonder why, Nate. I wonder why. I mean, I don't understand. I really don't. He goes on, that said, I don't understand why you took a walk to kill the special elections bill. Arkansans overwhelmingly want special election reform, and if it weren't for you leaving the chamber, it would have been law. Pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. That's the developments with that. Anyway, so I'm just saying people react to what goes on. There's a post. And again, if the truth assaults your integrity and character, I can't help you there. I can't help you there. I mean, go back and listen. I mean, this is the headline. Working for a lobbyist while being a legislator. Now, that's the headline, okay? That's the truth. You're a legislator and you're working for a lobbyist. If that insults your integrity and character, that's the truth doing that. That's not Conduit. That's not Conduit News doing that. The key thing is Arkansas law prohibits a legislator from being a lobbyist. But did you know it's not against the ethics law for a state senator or state legislator to work for a lobbyist? Shouldn't it be prohibited? It's if anything, it's a public service announcement saying there's a huge problem here. We have people on trial for public corruption, and there is a reason for it, and it's because of the culture down there. And when these kind of loopholes exist, it only increases the possibility and potential. And we're all fallen human beings, and any one of us can make a mistake. All of us make mistakes every single day. Okay, moving on. The Department of Human Services has recently gone through an audit. Legislators have been looking over records, and it's not good. Hunter Field of the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette reports that there's an audit that has flagged the Arkansas Department of Human Services record keeping. It's extremely deficient. And let's keep this in mind. This is Asa Hutchinson's agency. This is the largest state agency, 7,000 employees plus. Legislative auditors reported Friday that several divisions of the Arkansas Department of Human Services have failed repeatedly, and in one case, purposely. You failed on purpose. They are not tracking spending, and they are not managing federally funded programs appropriately. Now, the Human Services Department, they decided to blame the fact that they can't get anyone to work there long enough, or that people quit. They also blamed, listen to this, technology changes. Technology changes, okay. They found 20 deficiencies. Technology changes. Now, would that be computer software by any chance? Would that be computer software? Do you think maybe it's computer software? Do you think maybe we'll find out that it's computer software? I mean, it's technological changes, but maybe it's Software. Have we been down this path before with John Selig and Mike Beebe? $200 million on, you could call them technological changes, where we gave a bunch of money away to companies and never even got it back and never even got a finished product after $200 million? Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Crazy, right? So they found 20 deficiencies. Lawmakers called the report shocking, concerning, and egregious, questioning whether the state may owe money to the federal government for the more than $126 million in questioned costs flagged by the auditors. Now, I am told, I don't know if I believe this, but I am told that legislators are saying that if they'd have had this information, that the government, essentially, the implication is that the Hutchinson administration hid all of this from them. If they'd have had this information, the fiscal session would have gone differently. Asa maybe wouldn't have gotten everything he wanted, and so on and so forth, etc., etc. I mean, I don't know if I believe that. I could say if we took bets and we had like a time machine, they've got this information, I'd tell you they're going to do exactly what Asa Hutchinson says to do, because there's something they don't know how to organize. The people who are outraged now wouldn't have been outraged then, because they would have been, well, we need to respect our governor. Our governor has been a Republican for 25 years. How dare we question his leadership? That's what they would have done. Yes, yeah, and I don't want a primary opponent from our governor. That's what would have happened. But there are, but I did have heard, well, maybe things would have been different. I think certainly the optics would have been different, but I think in the end they would have put together whatever pieces of words they needed to put together to assemble what they would call the truth today to get them through the fiscal session, and then they would have moved on. So, $126 million. Now listen to this. Senator Gary Stubblefield, who is a conservative, a Republican from Branch, said this, quote, I'm sure this panel is aware that this country owes $21 trillion in debt, and even though the feds may have printing presses, I don't think they're going to be as gracious with the funds. Senator Stubblefield goes on, and I think this agency needs to get its house in order, and they need to do it quickly, because we're talking about a $9 billion agency here. With a B, we could be in trouble real quick. Asked whether she could assure legislators that the state won't get into financial trouble with the federal government, Misty Bowen Eubanks, the department's interim chief fiscal officer, said it wasn't likely based on the early stages of the reconciliation process. She even says, we may be able to get more money out of this. All in all, we're talking about 23 examples of rule breaking here. The Gazette calls it non-compliance across 4 state entities. Now, keep in mind, this is Asa Hutchinson's Department of Education, Department of Career Education, the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences, and the Human Services Department. 13 findings were, listen to this, repeated infractions that had remained uncorrected since fiscal 2016. So 13 of these findings, they've already been cited for once, and they didn't fix them. Oh, is this part of the reducing state agencies by 50% process? Is this what this is for? Is this part of it? It must be. It must be. This must be part of it. This is part of our conservative governor's leadership. The first centered on reimbursements. I want to get to the part where somebody did something on purpose, because I think that had people couldn't believe it. Hang on, let me find this one part. Okay, so check this out. This is it says the agency underreported spending more than $10.4 million for the quarter because of a communication breakdown between the medical services and accounting divisions. Quote, because of this breakdown, managerial accounting purposely reported expenditures from the previous quarter and would knowingly adjust the report at a later date, the report reads. That finding vexed lawmakers. How do you knowingly report inaccurate expenses? Asked Representative Fred Love, a Democrat from Little Rock. So they underreported by $10 million. So they actually had spent $10.4 million more. It sounds like they just copy and pasted. Well, we don't know. We'll just, you know what? You know, I got an answer. I got an answer to Democrat Fred Love's question. How do you knowingly report inaccurate expenses? Well, because the expense reports are due, and it's $4.58 on a Friday. That's how. And it's way easier just to do it. It says, it's $4.58. It's Friday. I've got to go. That's how you underreport. How do you do it, though? It's $4.58 on a Friday. That's the honest answer. My buddy's turning the lights out already. I got to get out of here. Just what did we spend last quarter? That's what we spent this quarter. We'll fix it later. That's how you do it on purpose. We got to take a break. You're listening to Conduit News Radio. Back in just a moment.
This is ASA News, The Parrot. With breaking news from the Capitol in Little Rock. I'm Bob Maloney. There are reports circling around from politicians who are in the know, and the same phrase keeps being used. That phrase is new revenue generation. Let's go to our reporter on the ground from the Capitol, Haley Hogwash. Haley?
Thanks, Bob. Yes, it seems the more politicians I talk to, the more I hear the phrase new revenue generation. We're trying to figure out exactly what that means, but you can rest assured it will be good for the people of Arkansas.
Haley, it certainly sounds like something good. I like how the phrase uses the word generation. That makes me think this has got to be doing something positive for our children in the future. Haley?
Yes, Bob, some new developments. I've just been speaking to some people who are here and are not politicians, and they tell me the phrase new revenue generation is actually code for a new tax.
Oh, my. Well, if this is true, Haley, that would add to a growing list of new taxes that have barely made any headlines at all, so it's best not to discuss them here on ASA News, The Parrot.
Yes, Bob, I know it's sure to make government officials angry that their phrasing of the new revenue generation has been changed by the people and called a tax increase.
I would expect an announcement from Mother Government soon to set the record straight. What is the new tax? Revenue generation, Haley?
Well, this new tax, a new revenue generation would add to a growing list. First, there was a revenue generation on movies, books, and songs that people download using the internet. And next, there was the tax increase. The new revenue generation on all purchases made using the internet. And now I'm told this new revenue generation is a tax on the people's patience.
I realize the people don't like it, Haley, but specifically, what is the new tax? Revenue generation.
No, Bob, I'm telling you, according to the activists here at the Capitol who have gathered and are listening to some radio broadcast, the revenue generation is literally taxing the patience of the people of Arkansas. I'm told the less patience you have with the government
better not tax our patience.
The more they will tax your patience and the more money you will owe at a later date. I'm also told the collection method on taxing your patience will be decided in a newly formed multicolored ribbon task force.
How taxing.
PHP Parody.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Setting the media narrative every single day here at Conduit News Radio. Thank you so much for being with us today. When we come, let's see, I guess we got a few minutes, but at 7:33, we have the Republican pioneer, Gene McVeigh, on the program. Yes, I think you're right. I think we've got to start calling him the myth, the man, the legend, Republican pioneer, Gene McVeigh, be on the program. And we're going to talk, you know what, I don't even really know what we're going to talk about. Matter of fact, check this out. Let me find my message with him yesterday. Hang on a second. Yesterday, I was just like, hey, you want to come on tomorrow? And he was like, yeah, sure. I said, great. Anything on your mind? And he wrote back, a few things. And so, here we go. A few things. And now apparently he did speak at Springdale last night. He writes mainly about how the Democrats are out praising Asa. So anyway, we'll talk to him about what was going on. Matter of fact, we've had somebody on our Facebook Live post right now, conversing with Gene, saying it was nice to meet him the other night at that Springdale event. I'm also told, hang on, let me announce this. Is there a forum tonight? Did I see that right? Hang on a second. Between two Senate candidates. Hang on 1 second, because I want to make sure I report this accurately. Here we go. There is so Senator Brian King and State Representative Bob Ballinger forum at the Washington County Republican Committee tonight. It's open to the public. It'll be at the Willie James Event Center in Tontitown. Am I pronouncing that right? Tontitown? All right, anyway. So, so that'll be interesting. So there's a public forum. I also know there's a debate later in the month. I think at the end of this month, there's a debate between those two candidates. I think at the Warren's Rec Room in Alma. So that'll be good, too. It's always good. Again, Republican primaries are such a good thing. They're such a good thing because it's the ability to actually talk about what everybody claims they believe Republicans stand for. So, anyway, the phone number, 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. You know what's interesting about this ecclesia thing? Because I got this John Woods piece. There were more witnesses, and essentially they had the head of the Northwest Arkansas Economic Development and Planning District testified the other day and essentially admitted, yes, legislators are the ones that steer the grants. So this idea that we can say, I didn't give the money, it was the Planning and Development District. Yeah, exactly. So we got that out of the way. But you know what's interesting? I got to looking at the Board of Regents over at Ecclesia College. You know, they're involved in all of this with Orrin Paris pleading guilty to. And some of the people who are on there, I wonder if they're following this story at all. Honestly, Eric Metaxas, he's got one of the best biographies I've ever read on, not Wilberforce. Why am I blanking? Oh, I'll correct it in a minute. Anyway, David Barton is on here as well. I had no idea the amount of people on their Board of Regents. All right, we got to take a break. Back in a minute.
Lobbied for, and he lost his election kind of resoundingly. It was a three-way race or a four-way race, and he came in third despite having outspent a lot of the other people. And again, rather than criticizing us directly or being an adult about it and just accepting a loss, he went and sent a letter to our donors. He was completely besides himself that someone would be willing to point out the fact that his son had lobbied for much larger government.
Yeah.
So really it's an issue of, for us, from our perspective, it's really an issue of increasing transparency, because we have a lot of politicians in the Republican Party who are very happy to run on a limited government platform. They are, generally speaking, pro-life and pro-gun, but you don't want to leave them in the room with your good silverware because they'll rob you blind.
Wow. That's probably the best phrase of the interview right there. It's easy. Those are the low-hanging fruit issues, and those are some of my biggest issues. But I mean, like here in Arkansas, everybody agrees on that for the most part. So, but it's like, what is your tax policy? What do you, how do you believe, the regulatory structure should look like, if any at all? And that's really when you get into the weeds and stuff. We're talking with Leo Knepper, the CEO, Citizens Alliance for Pennsylvania. The website is empowerpa.org, so check it out. That's empowerpa.org. Leo, I got one more question for you. So, folks down here in Arkansas, we probably would have lost a bet in terms of, especially if we were listening to the media coverage, that Donald Trump was going to win Pennsylvania. He did win Pennsylvania, thankfully. We do not have a Hillary Clinton presidency. So I'm just curious, what was your feeling before the election about those chances, and what was your feeling on election night when Pennsylvania went red?
So, excuse me. So I was actually really skeptical that Donald Trump would carry Pennsylvania up until probably about 3 weeks out. What I had started to notice, as you can imagine, I do quite a bit of driving in the state, and what I had noticed was there were a lot of Donald Trump signs in people's yards who I had never seen a political sign for in their yards before. So, I mean, generally speaking, yard signs are a bad gauge of political, intent, but the sheer number of signs that I saw in previously apathetic homes,
bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
It's Eric Metaxas' book, his biography on Dietrich Bonhoeffer. That's the one I've read. Now, he's got others, because everyone's flooding me saying, it's this one, it's that one. I've got somebody said, it's the Martin Luther bio by Eric Metaxas. Like, no, he's got others. I haven't read the one on Martin Luther. I bet that's really good. I'm talking about the Bonhoeffer one is good. Very, very, it seems it's a thick book. But anyway, it's really good if you're into that kind of thing. Hey, folks, welcome back to the program. We've got Republican pioneer, the myth, the man, the legend. We've got Gene McVeigh with us. Gene, welcome, sir. Good morning to you.
Hey, good morning, Paul. We missed you at Springdale last night.
Well, how did it go? Tell us what the event was, and tell us what you talked about.
Well, Jeff Olin put together an outstanding event at the historical AQ Chicken House restaurant in Springdale, and Jeff allowed Joe Maynard to speak before Jan Morgan gave us a rousing speech. It was like a rock concert there. The people were electrified and excited, and so you really missed an event.
Well, I'm glad it went so well. And I did see, I think, a Facebook Live, at least a little bit of the attendance, and the room seemed pretty packed. And I'm seeing this everywhere. Up in my neck of the woods where I live up here in Northeast Arkansas, Jan came up a couple, I guess maybe a month and a half ago, and she packed out a room to the likes. I've been following politics up here for a while. I've never seen a turnout like that for anybody. And so she really is, having quite the draw.
It's a movement.
Yeah. So what did you talk about when you got up there and discussed Gene McVeigh? What did you have to say?
Well, I was struck by the way the Democrats, and not just the ordinary Democrats, but the far left fringe of the Democratic Party, how excited they are about Asa Hutchinson and how supportive they are. And I didn't get to talk a lot about that, but the fact that Jason Rappert supports Asa Hutchinson is not surprising. But when you have Max Brantley writing that at a Christmas party at a home just a few steps from the governor's mansion was something of a group therapy session for the several hundred liberals who dropped by. And then he said, striking amid the political gloom was how often people pointed down the block and remarked how the occupant, Republican Asa Hutchinson, had been a bright light. Yes, let us now praise.
Now, is this a piece you're reading from again? You're saying that this is a Max Brantley article, or did you say John Brummett? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that part.
No, this is a Max Brantley article.
Okay. Well, I'm getting confused because John Brummett writes good things about Asa too.
Oh yeah, Brummett is he could be the cheerleader for Asa. In fact, Brummett wrote, "Let's put a constitutional amendment on the ballot to stop this damnable election of appellate judges. Vote for a governor you trust to make solid nominations. Actually, I trust Asa Hutchinson in this regard." So,
yeah, last week, we're talking with Gene McVeigh. Last week, I saw, Brummett was out defending Asa again on the grocery tax, saying, it's not spin. And he even argued that because it would affect the rich, that raising the grocery tax to the full 6.5% would be okay if they had some sort of low-income tax credit, for poorer individuals. So that's interesting. But yeah, this is my thing. When is it going to? Let me ask you this, Gene. Do you think people thought, and I mean Republicans, and I mean even maybe moderate Republicans, do you think that they thought John Brummett and Max Brantley would be writing complimentary pieces on Asa Hutchinson back in November of 2014 when he was elected, and they called it for Asa at 7:33? It was a Republican sweep, massive Republican majorities. Do you think the rank and file thought that John Brummett would be defending Asa and writing positive stories about Asa's leadership and that sort of thing?
Absolutely not. And I hate to say this, Paul, but John Brummett and Max Brantley knew more about Asa Hutchinson than the Republicans knew about Asa Hutchinson. Brummett wanted to let his liberal friends know that a victory for Asa Hutchinson would not be as bad as liberals had feared. And they saw Asa as having a better chance than Mike Ross for continuing Obamacare in Arkansas.
Wow. But that's, I've never thought of that. That's exactly
question.
Right. Go ahead.
How did John Brummett and Max Brantley know so much about Asa? Did they bump into Asa at an unlit tarmac and at the airport at Phoenix? Did they have Asa's phone wiretapped? Because they certainly knew what was coming. And Republicans, it was a shock to most Republicans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you're right about that, Gene. I mean, it is pretty incredible, and I guess what's deflating to me is how there still is so little. I mean, there is opposition in the Republican Party to the governor. Yes, there is, but as far as at the Marble Palace, there's not enough people. I mean, people will say things independently, but they're afraid to organize against the leadership. They're afraid to organize as Republicans against it, but yet there are so many there's so many factors to look at, and not to mention their policies that you're pursuing. Not to mention it's universal rejection of the Republican leadership's direction, not just on the Conduit for Commerce scorecard, but for most all scorecards. They're unhappy with one way or the other, the Family Council or Americans Conservative Union or whatever. They're unhappy with their score there, and it's like, okay, you guys need to understand who you're following. So that's an indicator. And then you have the indicator of the liberal media. I mean, the liberal press cannot say a positive word about President Donald Trump, but they can't say enough about the leadership and Asa Hutchinson, Republican governor. They can't ever say a negative word. Now, there's something about that picture that doesn't make sense.
Absolutely. That's absolutely true. And Asa... Well, when he had the national spotlight, you remember when he made his speech at the Republican National Convention, and he blasted Hillary Clinton for her support of Obamacare?
Yes.
He sounded like a conservative. But then, when Hillary Clinton showed up at the University of Arkansas Pine Bluff, she only had glowing remarks for Asa Hutchinson. She said, I'm really supportive of what Governor Hutchinson is trying to do to make sure Obamacare stays here in Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, let me, matter of fact, the article that you just referenced, I just sent over to Joe. I'm going to throw it up on the screen here. This was back on July 19th of 2016. You weren't the only one that saw the hypocrisy here, okay? The headline, Arkansas governor bashes Clinton on health care, yet backs key Obamacare provision. Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson used part of his speech Tuesday night at the Republican convention to bash Hillary Clinton over health care without mentioning the way he has earned scorn from conservatives by the way he has implemented Obamacare in his own state. Asa said Clinton offers more of the same failed top-down approach to health care where Washington tells the states what to do. But in Arkansas, Hutchinson has become an unlikely advocate of expanded Medicaid coverage, one of Obamacare's core components. Joe, see if you can pull up the Hillary Clinton video, because while we've got Gene McVeigh on, go ahead and pull that up. It's at 2350. But yeah, Gene, let me get your reaction to what I just read.
Well, it's something that maybe Arkansas Republicans will start to wake up to. But the fact is, Asa Hutchinson is not who he claims to be. In fact, when most of the leadership and Asa Hutchinson endorsed Marco Rubio, they thought that would be the turning point. And I don't know if you remember what Asa said, but he said it is up to Arkansas to stop the Donald Trump show.
Yeah.
The next generation of conservatives cannot allow Donald Trump to take everything we stand for and throw it away.
Yeah.
And now we know everything they stand for. And it's big government, socialized medicine, sky-high taxes, and pork barrel spending.
Well, I mean, I was not a Trump supporter during the primary, and I was very worried about his candidacy as well. I did vote for Donald Trump, obviously over Hillary Clinton, but I took him getting the nomination pretty hard when it first happened. But I have to say that I was wrong. I mean, if you look at what Donald Trump has done, he's done amazing things. The mainstream media keeps trying to lay out all these nets for him, and they keep falling into their own nets. It's really something that's amazing. Saudi Arabia just recognized Israel's right to exist. North Korea may denuclearize. We got tax cuts. I hope we get more tax cuts. There's a lot of stuff that's going on here. And, but then you look at what Donald Trump did getting rid of the individual mandate, and then you look at what Asa did when we were trying to repeal Obamacare. Asa went on MSNBC and was used as a Republican puppet so that MSNBC could say, oh, here's a Republican that doesn't support what Donald Trump is trying to do in repealing Obamacare. So, you gotta wonder if he's, come to the same conclusions that I've come to, or if he's trying to kind of fight what Donald Trump's trying to do. Go ahead, Gene.
Well, with all of that horsepower behind Marco Rubio, he was able to carry 2 counties in Arkansas in the primary, and then in the general election against the former First Lady of Arkansas and First Lady of the United States, Donald Trump won more than 60% of the vote. Ronald Reagan didn't get 60% of the vote the first time he ran. So the people of Arkansas, somehow there's a disconnect between the governor and the people that he governs.
Gene, you are a Republican pioneer, Gene McVeigh. You served in our military honorably, and I appreciate your service. And you were a Republican. You really were a Republican when it wasn't cool to be a Republican. And you worked in the grassroots and everything else. And so when you see the state of Arkansas now, and you listen to Hillary Clinton come to Arkansas and compliment Asa Hutchinson when she said this, I want to get your reaction. Here's Hillary Clinton when she was running in a primary against Bernie Sanders. She stopped by Arkansas. She said this.
Democratic governor, now Asa Hutchinson, the current Republican governor, have been among the most creative leaders in the country to figure out how to expand Medicaid in Arkansas, to take care of, more than 100,000 people last time I checked. And you know what that's meant? That's meant not only that people got health care, it's also meant that rural hospitals have stayed open that are closing in states that refuse to extend Medicaid. And I know it's a favorite issue on the Republican right, and I know how hard it is to try to do something as important as extending Medicaid, but I'm proud of Arkansas, and I go around bragging on this state because this was bipartisan. The Republican legislature had to approve it, and I am really supportive of what Governor Hutchinson is trying to do to make sure it stays here.
All right, so
Arkansas.
Gene McVeigh, Republican pioneer in the grassroots, you worked hard. What are your thoughts on hearing that?
Well, I think you can probably imagine. Back in 1972, I ran for state senator, and that was before they had the gerrymandering going on in Arkansas. My district was all of the counties of Baxter, Boone, Marion, Searcy, and Newton. And if I could imagine that we'd have a two-party system and that things would turn out like they've turned out with legislation being passed with 100% of the Democrat vote and just a handful of Republicans, I would not have believed it. Absolutely would not have believed it.
Yeah.
And after I ran for the Senate, I got more votes than anybody serving in the Arkansas legislature except for my opponent. And I was defeated. But I became the Baxter County Republican chairman, and we worked on a two-party system. We couldn't even imagine having a majority, but just having more than one or two members of the legislature would have been a victory. And so we've had a slap in the face with the way that our Republicans are governing.
Mm-hmm. I agree. We're talking with Gene McVeigh, Republican pioneer. We have a question for you that's coming in on our Facebook feed over at facebook.com/Conduit News. Mark writes, hey, ask Gene how the pressure tactics of Asa and company differ from other governors he has known. Contrast the style for us. People think what Asa is doing is normal. And so if we look, Gene, you've got Asa pressuring Republican committees to disinvite Jan Morgan to speak. We have recently him, kind of trying to figure out the billboard owners of who's putting up Jan Morgan billboards and that sort of thing. So can you answer that question for us? How is Asa's style compared to past governors? Is it normal?
Well, it's absolutely not normal. I envision that Asa drags these Republicans into his office, and he tries to intimidate them like he tried to intimidate Hannah Webb over the billboard. And the difference is that you can't intimidate Hannah Webb, a college student. But unfortunately, we have some snowflake Republican legislators that melt when Asa Hutchinson takes them to the woodshed. And we're supposed to have 3 separate branches of government, but they're pretty much all under Asa Hutchinson's authority right now, and they fear Asa Hutchinson because he has so much money, and he will make sure they have a primary opponent.
Well,
and so they don't have the courage to stand up to him.
And that goes back to, I think, kind of our original point when we were talking about John Brumman and Max Brantley and these liberals that knew that Asa was going to be so lukewarm, he was going to get elected on popular conservative ideas but then not implement them. But if Mike Ross had been elected governor, it would have been worse for the Democrats because Mike Ross would have vetoed many of the policies attempted, but the legislator would have just overridden the vetoes because the governor constitutionally is actually not that powerful. Is not very powerful when it comes to lawmaking because you just can override the veto with a simple majority. So this kind of goes back to the same point of there wouldn't necessarily be. I mean, what a Democrat governor wouldn't have the same pull of intimidation that a Republican governor does, who's not a true conservative.
Well, the intimidation started with the Speaker of the House, Davy Carter, and the President pro tem, Michael Amarup. They were arm twisting to get this Obamacare passed. And you remember Davy Carter even sent the state police out to pick up one of the representatives and drag them back to vote on Obamacare.
Yeah, what didn't he have to? I don't remember specifically, but didn't he have like an emergency dental procedure that needed to be done or something? I can't remember.
He did, but they didn't care if he was on his deathbed.
Yeah.
Just like Asa Hutchinson didn't care that Jake Fowles was under indictment. As long as he was going to vote for Asa Hutchinson, that's all that mattered.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Well, hey, Gene, I appreciate you being on the program. We're out of time this morning, but again, I appreciate all your work, and I appreciate your perspective as somebody who's seen the changes in this state. And I think what we're really saying is not a lot has changed. I mean, we've changed the color of T-shirts we're wearing from blue to red, but we really haven't seen the reforms the people have been voting for the last few election cycles. And I'll give you the last word, Gene McVeigh.
Well, listen, Paul, we really appreciate you. We appreciate Conduit. And keep up the good work.
Okay, I will. Gene, be safe. Folks, we're going to take a break. This is Conduit News Radio. Back in just a moment.
This is State Representative Dan Sullivan with a Liberty Moment. The Declaration of Independence states, to secure these rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. In other words, people are responsible for the character of their Congress. If that body be ignorant, reckless, or corrupt, it's because the people tolerate ignorance, recklessness, and corruption. If it be intelligent, brave, and pure, it's because the people demand these high qualities. If the next centennial does not find us a great nation, it will be because those who represent the enterprise and culture and morality of the nation do not abide in controlling the political forces. James Garfield. This is Dan Sullivan with the Liberty Moment.
Paid for by Sullivan for Arkansas. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Let's see here. Dennis, kind of like a mafia family. Oh, man. Let's see here. Michael, Normal Asa learned well from Rhino Bush Clan, as well as his own Democrat playbook. Normal, but he fears the voter, though. Interesting. Man, I appreciate all the participation. There's a lot of times, folks, that the between the Facebook posts while we're live, and by the way, when people go back and listen after the fact, when we're not live, they go back and listen to this video every day. I get your notifications when you do comment, and I try my best to read them. But between the Facebook posts and between the text messages and things like that I get, it is really hard to keep up and respond to everything. But I so appreciate everything you guys are doing. So I have confirmed that on Thursday we will be talking with Senator Gary Stubblefield. So coming up on Thursday at 7:33, we'll be talking with Gary Stubblefield. Excited about that. He's always great to have on. Matter of fact, because he was quoted in the newspaper today on the DHS audit, and that's what I want to get his comments on. So we'll be talking with him. For sure. And then tomorrow, 7:33, we'll be talking with gubernatorial candidate Jan Morgan. Will be on the program tomorrow. So, and want to thank Jan for coming on. Want to thank Gene McVeigh for coming on today. So, anyway, folks, that's all the time we have for today. Go to conduitnews.com to get all of this stuff for free. If you want this broadcast, want this content, go to our YouTube page, though, and subscribe to get our smaller videos, and you'll be able to subscribe and get notification when we post something new, like we posted that Asa Hutchinson clip from 2006 saying he was going to eliminate the grocery tax, and, of course, now they're talking about increasing it. You would have gotten that notification that there was a new video before there was even a story written about it. And that story, by the way, is up at conduitforaction.org. Arkansas, be safe.